Hi, this is Cindy with another video tutorial. It is a pretty simple little pattern. You have your front and back pieces. You cut the front on the fold and cut two back pieces. You do the same with the lining that you're going to use. You cut the skirt as indicated on the chart, and then the hem is the unique and pretty part of this dress. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is sew the shoulder seams on our front and back of the lining and the fashion fabric. So let's do that and see what it looks like. Okay, I've sewn the shoulder seams of the lining and the fashion fabric. I'm going to take it over and press these shoulder seams on both of them flat, and then I'm going to pin it right sides together. Okay, I have pinned the right sides together. Now before you proceed, you have to decide how, when you're finishing your garment, how you're going to attach to close the back. Some suggestions are, of course, you could do buttonholes. That's one way. You can do button loops, and if you don't know how to do a button loop, I will do a video and post it on my YouTube channel about how to do a button loop. Or you can use snaps, either the vinyl snaps or metal snaps or whatever you would like to use. For this particular project, I'm going to use snaps. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sew up the back, around the neck, and down the back side over here. And then you're going to sew the armholes around like this. You will not sew the side seams, the bottom back, or the bottom front. So let's do that and see what it looks like. Okay, as you can see, it's all sewn together, and what I did is I trimmed each of the seams that I just sewed down to a generous 1/4 inch, so slightly over a 1/4 inch. And then around the sleeve openings, you're going to clip these rounded seams. You clip close to your stitches, but not into your stitches, all the way around your sleeve, maybe like every 1/2 inch or so. You'll do that on both sleeves. You'll also do it around the neck, go all the way around the neck. And then the other thing that you want to do is, this is the part that you want to have a nice corner. When you turn it right side out, it'll be the back corner of the dress, and so you'll clip off this corner diagonally close to that stitching, but not into the stitching. So I'm going to finish doing these clips, then I'm going to turn it right side out. I finished all my clipping, but I thought I would show you me turning it right side out, because sometimes it doesn't seem like it's going to work very well, but it does. You just keep working and pulling on your pieces of fabric, and you're pulling it through the shoulder. Okay, and this is why you didn't sew the bottom front or back closed. Alright, then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same through this shoulder. So you just work it all through that shoulder. One tip I have is lining fabric. For the most part, you don't really see it, and it's best if you use really lightweight fabric, because basically a lining, what you're trying to do is just have something to conceal all of your raw edges. So anyway, here it is, turned right side out. Take something like your scissors or a chopstick or something, and gently, so you don't poke through, turn out those corners that we clipped so that you get a really nice sharp corner right there in the back. See? So we'll do that on both sides, and then I'm going to take this over and press it. So, okay, just that quick and easy, we have our bodice done, and it is lined. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the back underarm and the front underarm, and we're going to place right sides together. Alright, and we're going to sew that underarm seam. So here is the underarm seam with right sides together sewn, and when you fold it back down, you have the entire arm done on your bodice. So let's fold this one down. So right now this is what your bodice should look like. Something like that. The next thing we're going to do is start to work on the skirt. Okay, this is the skirt cut to the size that's on the chart. We're going to take it, and the first thing we're going to do is finish these raw edges here. If you have a serger, you can serge down those edges. If you don't have a serger, use a very nice overcast zigzag edge on it, and then I'll come back. Okay, I have overcast the edges of my side seams. Now, a bodice opens in the back here, but by the time you attach the skirt, just having this much of an opening isn't quite enough to make it easy to get on and off. So you need to have this opening here in the back go farther down into the skirt area. And for this particular project, we're going to go down about 3 inches down from the top. So leave about 3 inches at the top open, and then start sewing at that 3-inch mark, 3 inch down from the top mark that you just made. Be sure to back tack a couple times. Back tack at the bottom. All right, so here was the mark we made that was 3 inches down from the top. We're going to open this up. We're going to go press our seams open and flat all the way up, even including this open part. Okay, so here's what it looks like. It's all pressed open. We're now going to put this into our machine, and we're going to sew about 1/4 of an inch in, about 1/8 of an inch in, kind of down the center of what we just turned back, down to where that opening is. And right at the base of that opening, let me get this so you can see better. We're going to go back and forth a couple of times. The reason is there's going to be a lot of pressure when you're opening this up all the time. You're going to be pulling on that, so you want to reinforce that area right there. And then we're going to sew back up the other side. So here is what the back opening looks like. You have the little top stitches down, you have the reinforcing down here so that it can't rip down any farther in that seam. So trim up all your strings, and then we'll do the next step. I'm gonna sew right sides together and then fold them in half of my 2 hem pieces, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I took these and I sewed them right sides together. Okay, so here's my seam, and then I pressed them wrong sides together so that I have a nice loop like that. I did the exact same thing with the bottom hem. Now, what we're going to do is attach those to our skirt back, our skirt. So we're going to align the seams of the little hem piece first, right with the back of our skirt. Okay, and then we're going to pin it all the way around. This first piece is pinned all the way around, and if you notice, I put the pins way low because I don't want them anywhere near where I'm going to be sewing when I sew the other piece on. So again, find the center back. Oh, there's the seam there, and then find the center back seam in this piece, and then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to pin this, lining up the center back seam, making a little sandwich, and you're going to pin this one in place too. So anyway, you're going to pin that all the way around, and I'll show you what that looks like. So here you see we have it pinned on. So the order is we have the skirt, the little trim piece, and then the hem at the bottom. Now I'm going to take this over to my machine and sew my 3/8 inch seam all the way around. Okay, I sewed all the way around with my 3/8 inch seam. Be sure to keep it so that the upper layer doesn't pull on you, so just keep it kind of pulled tight as you pull it through your machine so that this piece, this top little you're sewing through a lot of bulk. So when you get to the very end, this top one might be pulled a little bit, so kind of keep track of that as you're going around so that it doesn't end up with a pucker at the end. So here's what it looks like. If you don't have a serger, trim this down so that it's nice and neat, and then zigzag the edge of this. If you have a serger, go ahead and serge this seam, and then you're going to press it up so that it lays nice and flat inside your dress, and then you're going to top stitch right along there to hold that seam up and flat. Okay, so here is what our hem looks like. It's been serged or zigzagged and then pressed up and top stitched down, and then I went out and I pressed the little skirt so that it doesn't have any major wrinkles in it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach it to the bodice. Now whenever you do gathering, it's really important that you determine the center front, the center back, and the sides of what you're going to gather. Okay, the center back is really obvious because you have that seam. Center front, go ahead and put a pin in, and then put a pin on the side seams where the sides are, because you don't have seams. This is one continuous piece for this particular skirt. Okay, then we're going to run a gathering stitch all the way around the top and gather it up to fit the bottom of the bodice. But when you have these 4 quadrants, then you match those here on your bodice. You know that your gathers are even all the way around. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, this step here, you have 2 options that you can do. The first option is to take your bodice, okay, put the right side of your facing to the wrong side of your outer skirt, so it looks like this, okay, and then we're going to sew that, and then we're going to pull the bodice up and over and then turn that under and sew it across the top. That way you don't have any raw edges on the inside or the outside. This is a little bit trickier. If you are new to sewing, just take the bodice lining and the bodice and the skirt, and take the bodice and put it on the right side of your skirt, sewing right sides together, sew all the way around, and then just finish this seam. So you'll have a finished seam on the inside of your dress, and you might be able to see just a little bit of it in the center back, but there's nothing wrong with that at all, and it is much easier. So, but I'm going to show you how to do this step. But if you're not comfortable with this, just place the right side of your bodice to the right side of your skirt and sew it on. So let's proceed with showing you how to do this step. Okay, so here's our setup. Here is the right side of our skirt with our gathering stitches at the top. This is the right side of the lining that's going to be on the inside. You're going to put that right, so the right side goes to the wrong side of the skirt, like that, and you line up that edge right with the edge of your bodice, put it in your machine, and then we're going to sew just, if your machine can just do little moves, just 1 click short of a 3/8 inch seam, and we're going to sew that all the way around, and I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done. Okay, so now we have sewn all those gathers on like we talked about, and you take your bodice and you flip it back up this way. Alright, you can kind of see where we're going with this. So now all we need to do is turn this under and top stitch it around over the seam that we just sewed the gathers on with. Now what I like to do is run a stitch just around the top of this so that I know where to fold. Let me show you. Okay, again, I set my foot for the 3/8 inch seam, but I'm going to just move it over 1 little notch to the right so that it makes the seam just slightly smaller than 3/8. Then I'm going to sew just along this edge, and all this is going to be is give me a guide as to where I want to fold it up. So I'm going to do this, then I'm going to go take it and press it right along that line. Okay, I'm going to try to get this really close so that you can see. I don't know if you can see it or not, but the stitching is here. And when I folded and ironed it, I did it so the stitching will be on the inside when I sew it on. So it'll be like that. So that's why we made it that little bit less than the 3/8 inch seam. So let me show you what it's going to look like sewn on. The first thing we're going to do is do the turn. So right here at the edge, we're going to turn this under and up and over that back vent area and get it down so that we cover, just barely cover, the stitch where we sewed on the gathers. Give it a pin. All right, and then I'm just going to pin all the way down, hiding that stitching that we did. All right, and theoretically this should all come out just perfect from one end to the next. And so I'll pin it all and then show you. Okay, I've used a lot of pins to make sure that it's going to fit correctly, and now I'm just going to start at one end and top stitch all the way around to the other side. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, here's what it looks like from the back. You just top stitch down very close to the edge, do it nice and slow so you get a really good little top stitch, and just do that all the way around. On the inside, you won't have any raw edges, and some places you might hit the lining, other places you don't. It doesn't really matter, it's on the inside. And so other than putting your buttons or your snaps or whatever kind of attachment you're going to do, the dress part is done, and I'll show you how to do the tie next. Okay, we're getting ready to do the belt for the dress, and you need the center piece that's going to go from side seam to side seam across the front of your dress, the little piece that's going to scrunch this up in the middle, and that's a 2-inch piece of fabric that you cut and fold the raw ends towards the middle and then fold it in half again so that the folds are on each side like that, and we're going to top stitch that. I'll show you in a minute. And then the other pieces are the ties, and cut them really long, and then determine how long you want them after you get them all sewed together. So to determine how big to cut that center piece, measure your bodice from the center, from the side seam to the side seam. So this one is 9 inches, and you need to add a 1/2 inch on each side for your seam allowance when you sew to the ties. So I'm going to cut this one 10 inches. So I'll get right back to you. Here's our center piece, the front of the belt. I have sewn the ties on each side of that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn up as small of a hem as I can, just as tiny little rolled hem as I can get in this, and I'm going to sew that all the way around, all the raw edges except for the very end. Okay, I don't know if I told you when I started that I had finished the edges with a serger or a zigzag of the center piece and this end of the ties, so that when I sewed my my hem all the way around, I open those seams up and you have a nice finished edge here. So here's what the tie looks like so far, and I'll show you what's next. Okay, I made a small mark here. I did this with disappearing ink marker, but you could use anything that is just really light it will be covered up. I made a center mark here in the center of the tie and just a tiny little mark in the center of the dress. If you measure correctly, it should be that when you match up these side seams that your center will be obvious. Now what we're going to do is, here's the side seam of the dress. We're going to take this tie and we're just going to scrunch it up, okay, so that it doesn't go up into the armpit or down into the dress. All right, this is a really small dress. The larger sizes I'll give you some measurements for, but this one here, we just scrunch it down so that it stays on the bodice. Then we're going to top stitch it on both sides. Okay, as you can see that I have attached it on the sides here. I top stitched right through the side seam of the dress on both sides. So now we're going to take this little piece that we had made for the center, and I'm going to top stitch it on both sides. So you've got the main fold there and the two side folds that came together here. I'm going to top stitch on both sides. Okay, so here's that piece that we just top stitched. We're going to work in the center, although we're not attaching this to this part here, so it moves. So just fold this center part up, fold this down over it, all right, and then we're going to take it over to our machine and we're going to sew it so that it's pretty close to that, but it'll still be able to move. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, as you can see, I sewed it right here. See, it can still move. It's not attached anywhere. And then we're going to take and we're going to clip it off really close to where we sewed. Then we're going to turn that raw edge to the back and squish it down like that. All right, see, so you see no raw edge. Then we're going to take our dress, lay it out flat, find that center that you marked on your dress, and then we're going to tack that little center piece down in the back of the bodice so that it holds it right there. Okay, so here's the front of our little dress. This has been attached. Like I said, I sewed it through the bodice, just catching the back part of that. All right, so there's that. Then you need to decide how big you want to leave your ties for the back. One word of caution, don't leave your ties too long. It could be a little bit dangerous. So just determine where you want your ties and how you want them to be, and finish off the edge of your ties once you've determined how big you want them. To finish off the end of my ties, I just overcast that bottom raw edge. Then I turned it up against the side here, which makes a nice little triangle, and then I top stitched it down into place so that you end up with a very nice little point at the end of your tie. I wanted to show you the snaps that I ended up using on the back of this. These are metal snaps like this, and it takes a big piece of equipment like this to use those kind of snaps, and it's a little spendy to get started, but boy, I love my snaps. I use them all the time. The other option is you can use this, which uses these little vinyl snaps. They're awesome, and it's really inexpensive to get started. The only problem with using them on the dress like this, you will probably end up needing to iron your dress after you wash it a little bit, and these little snaps, if your iron touches them, they will melt, so that's a problem. The other option are the little hand sew-on snaps. Excellent option. Of course, buttonholes or the button loops, whatever you prefer. So anyway, that's my back closures. Oh, also, I have a tutorial on my YouTube station about how to use these. So thank you again.